Hey everyone, how you doing? So, Plants vs. Zombies 2. It's a pretty interesting game, isn't it? I feel like a lot of people tend to gloss over just how much you could talk about with this particular title, and that's a real shame, because some of the more obscure parts of PVZ 2 are absolutely fascinating. One of the examples that I'd love to get into in the future is something that was put in the files recently for the international version of the game, Plant Rarities. That could genuinely be a whole discussion, but again, different topic for a different day. Though while I mention it, it's pretty odd that this is a international change, isn't it? For those who may not know, PVZ2 actually has a couple of versions, sort of like PVZ1 does with its many platform releases. Unlike PVZ1 though, PVZ2 has genuinely massive differences between each version. PVZ2i, also known as the International PVZ2, is the version that most of you watching this video grew up with. It's that same version that added all the wacky and zany plants, zombies, and worlds, as well as the rough plant leveling system. Fun. Then there's PVZ2C, also known as the Chinese version of PVZ2, which is basically a gacha game. There's a ton of new content, and while it may not be as polished, it's still a very enjoyable experience if you don't mind dealing with the limitations of it being a gacha game at its core. We also have an educational version of PVZ2, but that's not really what I wanted to tackle in this video. No, for right now, I want the spotlight on a particularly interesting version of the game that almost nobody talks about, which is PVZ2 Tencent Social Edition. So in today's video, we're going to be discussing anything and everything relating to the Tencent version of Plants vs. Zombies 2. And well, finding information on it nowadays is extremely difficult, to say the very least. For a good reason too. This is gonna be a weird one. So without any further ado, let's get right into it. To start this discussion, I believe the most important topic to bring up is what we actually know about this version of the game. When it was made, is it still alive to this day? Did it do anything different to the known versions of PVZ2? Basically, I want to talk about the life and times of the Tencent edition. And luckily, we can immediately answer all three of those hypothetical questions, and then some. So, PVZ2T, which is what I'll call it moving forward, has a release date somewhere around November 18th in 2013, according to several articles released on the game at the time. It had a brief testing period as well, but we know close to nothing about this, which is a common trend you'll see throughout the video. Despite that, we know for a fact that PVZ2T discontinued its services in October of 2016. Rest in peace, my goat. Now, what exactly set this version apart from the other PVZ2 versions that existed at the time? Well, not too terribly much, honestly. If you compared this version to PVZ2C, its closest relative, you'd see that it was functionally identical to that version of the game on its launch, with some small key differences. To start, this version of PVZ2 focused on friendship, which led to the game being fully titled PVZ2 Tencent Social Edition. If you're not familiar with that naming philosophy or why it's important, a couple of years before this game released, there was a PVZ1 port for the Chinese markets called PVZ Social Edition, and the features in it were incredibly similar to this game. To put it simply, PVZ2T made it so that you could get sun from your friends at the beginning of levels, and you could also get free seed packets from them too, with these more often than not being seed packets that were pretty busted at the time, like Coconut Cannon. There was also another social element to the game, that being a roulette system, which 2C eventually took. Oh boy. This early roulette system could be spun by having friends help you spin it, and there were a lot of items on it, such as currencies, world keys, and puzzle pieces for the plants, which would allow you to unlock some especially rare ones. Other social elements of the game itself included being able to post about your victories and your losses with the in-game social system, as well as there being a timer system for each level that could be used to compete with others to see who was the fastest. Overall, the social part of TSE was very similar to its predecessor, and it seems like it was pretty neat. Oh right, and this video also had sorta crazy microtransactions here and there. Like, there was this Bilibili video I found where the game just dropped something on the lawn and touching it would bring you to a purchase screen. Why? Weird greedy stuff aside, this PVZ2 version doesn't have too terribly much else to showcase. In fact, it doesn't have a whole lot else to it at all. Yeah, okay, this is where the weird part of the video comes into play. Do you remember when I said this version hardly has any information online about it? Well, that's for a very good reason, and it's because it wasn't popular. According to a Bilibili article by who I can only presume to be a major PopCap fan or employee, the game had less than 1 million downloads while it was alive, despite being free. And this is especially odd when you consider the context in which the game was made. So, during the era when the game came out, PVZ2C was one of the top downloaded games in China, but many people at the time had issues with the game having a ton of microtransactions. So the solution to Tencent was to make a new version of the game that specifically had less microtransactions, I guess? According to Peng Jiaxin, the vice president at Tencent Games in 2013, boutique games and PVZ2 seemed to go together like bread and butter, and he had extremely high hopes for PVZ2T to succeed, stating, quote, "I believe that this product will reach a new height in market performance." End quote, it did not. I looked around and tried to understand what exactly caused this to happen, but I honestly couldn't find any information on the game's death. What I do know is that it was hardly updated since launch, only getting the Kung Fu world and a few new plants, possibly? We genuinely can't even confirm that much, because the game was so unpopular that it hardly got documented anywhere online. I'm saying this after hours and hours of research, and I seriously don't think there's any extra information on the game anywhere on the internet that isn't a dead link or locked to mainland China. I ran into far too many of those instances, and that was really disappointing. With all of that being said, there's actually one more interesting property of the game that might surprise you when you hear about it. Technically, just technically, you can still play PVZ2T, but only technically. This case is very similar to PVZ All-Stars, where it's undeniably archived content, but Chinese netizens have found the oldest version of the game and made it playable as long as you get a cracked copy of it. That was a relatively surprising shock, but a neat one nonetheless, though it made researching for this video 10 times harder, because almost every link on Baidu relating to the title leads to a download for the aforementioned cracked copy. Fun. Still, the fact that you can play this game nowadays at all is really neat. Of course, download this at your own discretion because, like, I don't know, I'm not responsible for your PC getting hacked. I digress. Simply put, that's all there is to this game. It's neat, a novelty at best, and at worst, completely pointless. While I was looking into the game's history, or lack thereof, I had a realization. This game died because it served no actual purpose. Even in 2013, a lot of fans clearly noticed how useless the game was, because 2C continued to skyrocket in popularity, with this version of the game being left to rot. That's not even mentioning the tragic irony in adding unique microtransactions to the version of the game that was supposedly trying to stray away from what 2C was doing. Yikes. It ended up failing catastrophically for Tencent, and they simply decided it wasn't worth messing with anymore. The fanbase moved on just as quickly because they already had PVZ2, and a PVZ2 that actually gets updates as well. Tencent didn't care, the fans didn't care, and in the end, I don't really care. This title might be the one Chinese project that truly had no reason to exist, and I think that in of itself is what makes this version of PVZ2 so interesting to me. Say what you will about titles like PVZ Online, but you can't deny that even a project as rough and unpolished as that one has fans. Something I noticed in a few forums discussing PVZ2T's death also discussed PVZ Online and how that was a game Chinese players actually cared about. It says a lot when one game's death sparks a conversation about another, and everybody forgets what made it start in the first place. And with that, I think that's honestly the best way I can end this video. There's so much I could add to pan out the runtime, but honestly, that's not necessary. Every major article and video I found on this game will be linked in the description if you want to learn more yourself. And if you're keen on diving even deeper, use the game's Chinese name in Baidu's search bar and go have an absolute blast with it. This video was a lot of fun to make, and I hope other people can uncover what I couldn't. If there's one thing I wish I found while making this video, it's the actual patch notes for the title. 'Tis a shame, but not something I'm gonna complain about too heavily for what I ended up getting out of my research. But with that being said, what do you think about PVZ2T? Do you think it deserved to be forgotten about? Do you not? Tell me your thoughts and more in the comment section down below. Also, if you're new around here and you like what you see, then maybe consider subscribing too. It helped me out a ton, and you get to see more content like this in the future, so it's a win-win. And finally, I'd like to shout out my extra YSI channel members, these being Asfa, Dan B, Envious, Error Kiro, Garfield Fan, Glitch into Code 867, Johnny Homeowner, Nicholas Vankowski, Plagued, and Song. Alongside my other YSI members, thank you all so much for your continued support on my channel, y'all rock. And now, as for me here, I'm gonna go liberate the world of Skyrim, so I'll see y'all in my next video. Peace.